the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. And as you know, on Mondays, I conduct interviews with activists from St. Louis. This morning, I had actually scheduled an interview with Byron DeLear and confirmed it with him on Friday. Something must have come up because I was unable to contact him this morning. So as Wendy Lumetta suggested to me a few weeks ago, said don't ever let a Monday go by without somebody being on the air with from St. Louis. So I immediately contacted her instead of just me talking about whatever it is that I needed to do, which, as you heard on Friday, didn't go so well. So I've contacted Wendy Lumetta from St. Louis. She's an activist. She's a citizen of St. Louis who really is not a scientist. She is a victim of nuclear pollution and is quite active in helping, get our government to really accept the responsibility of helping St. Louis. So before further ado, let me introduce you, Wendy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Lonnie. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. And again, thank you so much for your care and attention to the cause of St. Louis. It's a concern for a lot of people. So for you to be all the way in Oregon investigating and talking about this issue, there's so many people here that appreciate it, and I just want to really say a big hearty thank you. So thank you for thinking of me and calling me, and I'm glad that I was able to speak with you about this morning. So.
Well, great. Well, thank you for filling the gap, and I do hope that I can reschedule with Byron. I know that he was on the Caravan to Midnight. I think that's the name of the Midnight to Caravan or something like that. Another radio show that came on at midnight, you guys' time, which was really late, and so maybe he was on till 2 o'clock in the morning. It was too late. I have no idea what happened, but let's move on because you and I called you, frankly, about 15, 20 minutes ago. So we have not prepared. You did not really have any chance to prepare. But, the issue of St. Louis doesn't really need much preparation. The people of St. Louis are being poisoned, and our elected officials, like Flint, Michigan, are pretending like it's no big deal. So I think I want to use the Flint, Michigan issue so we can use this as a comparison as exactly how our government does not take nuclear pollution seriously, when in fact it's far, far, far more dangerous than lead in the water. I mean, lead in the water is dangerous because it harms the people that it drinks, causes mental retardation, motor skills, all kinds of horrendous diseases, but it does not destroy your DNA. It doesn't affect us for thousands and thousands of years. You can clean up lead in the water and have good cleaning water. You will have lifelong medical conditions, but you don't pass that on to your children.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think one of my questions here is, as a resident of St. Louis, one of the things that kind of blows me away is that, we're watching St. Louis be declared, we're watching I watched Flint, Michigan be declared a federal emergency by President Obama. Just by himself, he declared it a federal emergency. Do you
Mm-hmm.
know if anybody's actually contacting the White House directly? I know I've been calling Governor Jay Nixon's office and asking him to declare a state emergency, a federal emergency in St. Louis. But do you know if there's any effort to directly connect with the White House and talk to them about this?
Oh, absolutely. I've been efforting this issue for about 2.5 years. So literally the first thing I did is contact every single one of my electeds from the most local all the way up to President Obama. And other than him having an area on his website at whitehouse.gov, other than having an area there to put a little statement and then a request an action or a statement back, there's not a whole lot that he will listen to personally, I guess, without having more information or, at any rate, never really heard anything back from him until, I'll just call it the movement, when more people became aware and more people began contacting that whitehouse.gov statement. It gets to a point where once you have a certain amount of people that are contacting him about an issue, then he sent kind of a form letter back to all of us that didn't mention the issue at all, but just kind of said, here's what I have done for the environment, and here's what I am doing. So he never really actually mentioned Westlake or Bridgeton or the fire or radioactivity or anything like that. To my knowledge, I don't know that he has acknowledged it publicly. I know that recently there was a rabbi from St. Louis who was there, I believe, for a Jewish holiday, and President Obama was right there, and she was talking about, I think her name is Rabbi Susan, and she was talking about, people in St. Louis and having an urgency regarding this matter. And so I know that he has heard it from people other than just local citizens. He's heard it from, people officially in the White House. And to my knowledge, there has been no acknowledgement. I assume that is because there are so many toxic nuclear sites across the United States that if he were to acknowledge a cleanup of Westlake, well, then that would set a precedent for him to be required to clean up a whole lot of other sites, and he doesn't want to set that precedent. That's my belief.
Ding, 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 ding. I think
right.
you were. I think you get the gold star on that one. That's kind of my thinking. Actually, after the last time we talked and we were talking about the level, the gravity. I came into this quite naively with not knowing the area. I don't know why, but I thought that it wasn't that populated around there. I'm beginning to realize that really St. Louis is America's Fukushima. I mean, we didn't have an explosion, but we have just as many people exposed to massive amounts of radiation that are now, and with the same issues. We have a nuclear dump site that's, not being remediated, not being removed. I mean, it's a huge, gigantic issue of pollution that's being disregarded as something that is just like regular industrial waste. I mean, I was listening to Byron DeLear's interview from Nuclear Hot Seat last week, in which he was explaining the politics of how in different parts of the country nuclear waste is even handled differently. I mean, it's a stunning awareness that we're all kind of getting this come to Jesus moment. That's what I call them, as a come to Jesus moment, when you realize this is a serious issue that our elected officials must face, because this is a public health issue that is going to affect Americans for 3, 4, 5 generations down the road. So is there any movement going along? I know Bob Alvarez has produced a really awesome scientific study that actually shows how contaminated and where the hot spots are. So is there any movement with any of the documentation? Because now as we've moved forward, you guys have been silently, and I say silently, working on this because the rest of America didn't hear about it. Like, we just did not, even now, this issue is not even discussed on our local news. No one even mentions it. So
Mm-hmm.
when you're in St. Louis, do they discuss this on the air on a regular basis? Is this an issue that's reported on up there?
Well, it really depends on the news station that you're talking about. The different news stations have different agendas and people that they have to appeal to. They had one station that did a segment called Fact or Fiction. Well, when they were listing their facts, they didn't spell the word booze wrap correctly, and they didn't report the information accurately. So certainly the news channels, again, I think we talked about this last time. It's that the local news channels really don't want to cover something that is a negative for St. Louis. They would much rather focus on the positive, give people positive reasons to watch the news and to hear the news. And in a large way, as much as people need to be educated about this, they don't want to hear about it. So that's unfortunate because it's not going to go away on its own. It's not going to go anywhere without specific action from people who want to try to improve the situation, and ignoring it and pretending it doesn't exist really doesn't help anyone. So,
well, not only does it not help anyone, it actually kills people. This is the issue. This is not an issue that we can just let fester. I mean, we've seen what's happened with letting it fester for the last 70 years. I mean, go to coldwatercreeks.com, Coldwater Creek, coldwatercreekfacts.com.
mm-hmm.
And, you can actually see the maps, the data maps that they've developed. Like, it's unconscionable. And these are just the people that have self-reported, not all the people that have been affected. So,
and the people that have self-reported are only the people that actually know about it. And the people that know about it are the ones that have either possibly seen something on the local media, which isn't very likely, or more likely that they've heard about it through social media. So social media has really been the thrust to educate and inform the local population. And then, of course, when the school district notification came out regarding emergency planning, that was another thing that got a lot of people upset about it because they didn't know that this was happening right here in their own backyard. For years, I've lived here my whole life until I started actively finding out more about the situation and educating myself. I had absolutely no idea that it existed or what was contained there. So now I'm grateful that at least I know to avoid the site and to try to avoid my exposure level. But because these particles are wind-blown, and we're talking about alpha particles that the EPA and other responsible parties don't even test for. If they hold out a Geiger counter and it has however many clicks per minute, and then they say, okay, well, this is your, radioactivity reading. Well, no, it isn't. It's only the gamma reading. And we also have alpha and beta particles to be concerned about with the thorium that's been buried here in St. Louis. And it's very easy for those particles to become wind-blown. My understanding is that it's like talc or dust. It just blows away.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. That's what I mean. This is why when I heard about St. Louis, I just was dumbfounded that there's not a huge uprising there, because it's not just that little 5-mile, 10-mile perimeter. It's the entire city is being contaminated. And then to think that you guys had floods, which is bringing it all down the Mississippi River. Like, it's really just a shock that our government is allowing this. One of the things that I've really been talking about, and I posted it on several pages, was the idea, do you know if there is a class action lawsuit going yet in St. Louis?
I do not know if there is. I believe in the past there had been, we're talking about two different issues. One is Coldwater Creek and one is Westlake Landfill. And my understanding is that lawsuits have at least been initiated against both entities. As far as Coldwater Creek goes, I'm not sure where it stands, although I believe that there was an effort to try to establish precedent in the form of people having diseases and cancers that can only be caused by ionizing radiation. So if they have it, it means they've been exposed. It seems pretty open and shut, but apparently there is more to the legal process than that.
Yeah.
Now, at the Westlake landfill, because they do not monitor the things that they require, the thing is spewing toxins all over the place 24 hours a day, but they don't test for it. So if they don't test for it, then that means that probably they don't want it to exist. And the reason is because then they might have to do something about it. So
do you know if is there a lawsuit to make them test? Is there any type of litigation going on to force them to test then?
Well, interesting that you mentioned that, because actually in March, the Missouri Attorney General, Chris Koster, has on the docket a court-related issue for his lawsuit against Republic. Now, what that all will involve and entail, I don't know enough about the law to really be able to give you a lot of information. Maybe Byron will be able to talk to you at some point and make clear whatever questions you might have about that. But as far as individuals suing Westlake, I know that there had been issues there had been attempts from Republic in the past to ask people to accept an amount of money so that they will not go forward and sue for nuisance odors. Republic is pretty much stating across the board, and with the support of Missouri Health and Senior Services, that there are no health effects coming from the landfill.
Oh, my God.
Clearly, we know that that's not true, but the problem is that we don't have 24-hour real-time monitoring of anything there. So for them to go out and say they're going to capture an air sample, well, that air sample is only for that second in time and has nothing to do with the hours or days that preceded it or went after that. So, I'm not a criminal, but I wouldn't have to have a criminal mind to think that criminals are probably going to commit their crimes when nobody is looking at them. That just seems a logical thing to me. So, for instance, if they had to open up some exhaust pipe or something to let different gases and things spew, there's really nobody there to stop them, because there's nobody there to test it. There's nobody there to say that it's dangerous. It's pretty much an issue. It's pretty much the issue that if their eyes are closed to it, then it doesn't exist, and that's their story, and they're sticking to it. So,
well,
that's a little frustrating.
I would even suggest to you that you, honestly, I think that we need class action lawsuits. I think that's the only thing that's going to get these people. If you hit them, the only thing they seem to care about is money. So if we go after them and, we can remediate, the whole issue is that we're having conversations about remediation, but we're not talking about the health effects. I posted on my Facebook page, I actually contacted the law offices of Bonner and Bonner, the attorneys that are representing the soldiers from the USS Reagan who were sent into Fukushima to help clean up after the tsunami, who were exposed to nuclear radiation from the meltdowns and had no idea that they were being exposed, came back on the ship and kind of got suspicious when their superiors told them to strip naked, shower, and put their clothes in a decontamination bin. And they went,
yeah.
That was kind of a hint, right? And then
a little bit of red light.
And nobody, again, this is how silent the nuclear murderers are. Nobody even warned our soldiers. Still, their bodies just started deteriorating. I mean, 3 of them have already died. So there is a class action lawsuit. But he said for sure, Charles Bonner is one of the partners of Bonner and Bonner, and I'm going to give his cell phone number out. He said to give his cell phone number out to any of the victims of St. Louis. They would love to talk to you, because we really need attorneys who know. Now, the good thing about these attorneys at Bonner and Bonner is they actually did win some litigation already. They've gone up to the government was trying to keep the soldiers from suing TEPCO. And so they took it to a judge last summer, and the judge said, absolutely not. You can definitely sue TEPCO. So they did win one thing. I mean, so far they're on the winning track with this one, trying to get some help for these men. So let me give out that phone number, because I would suggest that anybody in St. Louis, don't leave it to other groups. Unless you are part of a class action lawsuit, start your own. And this is a law firm with known teeth. You know, they have some ability to take on the nuclear cartel. So Charles Bonner's cell phone number is 415-601-0268. And just to let you know, I am in conversation with his office. We're trying to schedule a time when he can come on, or someone from his office can come on here and talk about the issues that's going to happen, because you know, it's scary. Nobody wants to sue our government. But frankly, unless we take some serious litigation, unless they're getting hit from all sides, they're going to keep kicking the can down the road. As you have found out, the EPA basically thinks that their job is to protect the corporations, not the people. You know, they, like you said, they continually say they don't test, and then they say we don't see anything. When there are children dying of cancer, and people are getting catastrophically ill in St. Living and having life-changing events in their lives from, I mean, honestly, nobody should be living near these dump sites. Like, you guys should be at least 30. In Hanford, you have to live at least, it's by law, you have to live at least 10 miles away, at least. So it's an outrage that we have, as Byron highlighted, the politics of nuclear pollution is an interesting thing, because from state to state it is handled differently. So, you know, I think it's very important. I cannot urge people enough to take action. Don't wait for somebody else to start a class action lawsuit. Call up the Bonner and Bonner Law. I posted it on my Facebook page. I posted it. I don't know if it made it to the Westlake landfill site or the Just the Facts Please Mom site on Facebook, because those are pages that are monitored. So I don't know if they allowed it to go on there. But I know on my Facebook page, Lonnie Clark on Facebook, and on Facebook, my icon says nuclear equals cancer. So you'll know me, because nuclear does equal cancer. And that's exactly what we have to, you know. President Obama last week appointed Joe Biden the cancer czar. That's what I'm calling him. And without even a single conversation about nuclear pollution. I mean, it's off the charts now, because we have so much nuclear pollution. You stated it quite well. He doesn't want to acknowledge it, because that will be our only industry. We're going to have to shift from being a war machine to a medical service industry in this country, in order to manage all the cancers and leukemias and diabetes and schizophrenia caused by nuclear pollution. So,
and to understand the difference between, you know, one argument that the government makes is, you know, well, you could get a certain disease from exposure to different things. You know, maybe you're using Teflon cans, or you know, who knows what you're being exposed to that could be causing these different things. So that's one thing that Byron likes to use that I think is really accurate, and that is passing the nuclear hot potato. It seems that if you go to a government entity and say, you know, nuclear pollution is causing these problems, all they'll really do is argue the point that there are other things that could also cause those problems. And what I want the listeners to understand is that that's not true. There are many things, diseases, Hashimoto's is one, and I know that there are others that only come from exposure to nuclear pollution, to ionizing radiation. If you have the disease, it means that you've been exposed. So
well,
it's really important.
That speaks to exactly how they have gotten over. Our elected officials have been miseducated, wrongly educated about the negative effects of radiation. John Goffman did many, many, many studies, and when they pounded him out of the nuclear industry because he wasn't giving them the answers that they wanted, They basically hired new scientists to create new studies, quote unquote, that showed that it just, to demean his work. And those are the works that our government officials now rely on. And it's kind of like this. I heard a story over the weekend that said people who cuss actually are smarter. There's a scientific studies proving that people who cuss are now smarter. Well, you know what the interesting thing on that scientific study came out of a university? They got six participants from a university who were between the ages of 18 and 22, and asked them, list all the cuss words that you know, and then they said, list all the animals that you know. Well, as it turns out, the people who cussed could list more animals. So then their scientific study said people who cuss are probably smarter.
And that's a government study, exactly.
That came out of a university. We actually spent money on that, and that's called a scientific study. So we have really, I don't know if the listeners of this show or the people of St. Louis ever listened to another show that we have on UCY.TV called First Cup in the Morning with Jules. She talks about really the biomedical industry and mad scientists gone mad. Well, we really live in a culture where we don't respect science anymore. We don't have science. What we have is people twisting words so that profit is the only thing that matters. And it's time for us to take that back. And I'm going to give out Charles Bonner's phone number. The law firm is called Bonner and Bonner, and the attorney's name is Charles Bonner. His cell phone number is 415-601-0268. And I would say this to anybody who's in St. Louis. If you're not in a class action lawsuit, call up Charles Bonner, and you guys need to get one. Because really, the only way that the government or even the news media will take this seriously is if you get a class action lawsuit with some teeth in it, where we can get somebody who is willing to stand up to the nuclear industry and knows how to fight them tooth by tooth. You know what I mean? Knows exactly how to counter the misinformation that they spread on a regular basis. So
I think that's a great idea. Actually, I think anyone willing to take up this cause and put their intelligence and integrity behind it and educate the rest of us, I can't welcome that enough. I'll be calling Mr. Bonner a little bit later today. I understand that there may be some issue regarding a statute of limitations, which has been explained to me previously, but maybe I'm certainly not a lawyer, so I don't really feel comfortable speaking to that aspect of it. But certainly anybody who recently found out with their children having the emergency action plan sent home from school with them, they would all fall under the realm of the ideal person to contact Mr. Bonner, because their statute of limitations begins when they become aware of the situation, not when the situation begins, but when they become aware of it. So,
really? Is that a Missouri state law or is that a federal law? I did not know that.
I'm not clear on that, and maybe I shouldn't throw references out there that I don't have the reference to back it up, but I believe that is at least a Missouri law, and it's something that previously, when I first heard about this about 2.5 years ago, the Aaron Brockovich law team did come out to St. Louis, and they interviewed several people and kind of gave us information about how to move forward and whatnot. And then eventually, maybe a year later or something, I got a letter saying that because I did not have one of the compensable 27 cancers that are already recognized by RICA, then I would not be a candidate for them. So I understand that. I'm certainly not going after anybody in an effort to have money for myself as a part of this. All I really want is for them to clean up my hometown, and I think a case in court where they're found guilty would be certainly the way to do that. As far as compensable damages, I know that attempting to go for downwinder status under the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act is one of the goals of the Coldwater Creek Group. And so certainly if Mr. Bonner has already been prepared with other nuclear cases, then he should already know probably a whole lot more than any of us about all of these things. So I'll definitely be calling and having a discussion with him later today. I'm very interested in what he can do for the people in the area.
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, I have to be candid with you. Personally, I'm really stunned that the people of St. Louis are even willing to live there. Like, if it were me, I'd pack my bags. I don't care how poor I'd be done. But I appreciate you and I had a conversation about how devoted people are to St. Louis. And that speaks to how kind and generous the people of St. Louis really are. That they are really seriously so devoted to that area and that part of our country that they're digging in their heels and they refuse to back down and just be chased off by the nuclear monsters. I guess I was thinking about it over the weekend. In retrospect, that makes it a much harder challenge for the proponents of nuclear pollution who want to just keep it there, because the longer people dig in their heels in St. Louis and refuse to go away, we know that there's going to be more illnesses, the less they'll be able to hide it, because we know for a fact that the damage from nuclear pollution does not even show up for 3 to 4 generations, which is now. So now we're going to, and especially since this thing is still leaking, still spewing, it's not like they fixed the problem and covered it up and said, okay, well, we're not going to help the people who've been harmed in the past. It's an ongoing, I call it a Fukushima, because it's still a gigantic mess. They're doing zero about it. They're just, they're scratching their heads and saying, yeah, well, we're doing something, but not really. I mean, they're not really taking care of it. Not really. I've seen the pictures of bulldozers moving waste, covering dirt, but that doesn't remediate the radiation. That's, what this speaks to is this. This is an article that I read this week, over the weekend, called "The Buried Nuclear Waste Risky," says Stanford experts. The radioactive material from the laboratories that design America's nuclear weapons will have to be buried and kept away from humans for at least 10,000 years. But 3 Stanford experts say that the analysis of this project needs to be revised to reflect new strategies that aim to substantially increase the amounts of plutonium to be disposed of. This article goes on to talk about how the Department of Energy basically knows that what they're doing, their plan is, they say that it's a brand new scientific journal in Nature. It's a commentary article in the journal Nature, that the Waste Isolation Project, the WIP, was not designed to hold as much plutonium is now being considered for disposal. What this speaks to is our government doesn't really have a place to put this disposed waste. That's probably why they're fighting moving anything from St. Louis, because what the heck, where are they going to, they can't put it all in Idaho. You know what I mean? They can't move all of it, the whole 200 and whatever it is. I mean, I think that's partly why there's no honest conversation in regards to nuclear pollution at any level in any agency. There is not one official agency that is willing to be honest about how much nuclear pollution we have, the status of actually protecting the citizens from it. I mean, the more I dig into this quagmire, the more I'm beginning to realize we really have we need millions of people in the street. These class action lawsuits, I think, are going to be the key to getting people to, getting our government to have an honest conversation about the harm that we've caused.
I seriously hope that that's true. I want to make sure that the listeners understand that not only are we talking about nuclear war weapons waste, but we're also talking about the energy lobby. The energy lobby has everything to gain by approving nuclear, even though it's already very well known that there has never been a safe place for the nuclear waste. They simply do not have it. And besides that, they also try to confuse language when people discuss it by saying, well, these are high-level nuclear waste and these are low-level nuclear waste. So that when they say it's low-level, that kind of implies that it's really nothing to worry about.
Right.
No, it's a huge thing to worry about. The high weapons waste are the things that are actually the spent nuclear fuel rods that will, should be disposed of in a permanent and safe way forever. And then the low-level pollution, it certainly doesn't mean that it's not harmful pollution. It just means that it's less than a spent nuclear fuel rod. So I think even trying to get the people in charge to use the correct vocabulary in describing what the thing is, they're really not doing anyone any favors by trying to minimize the health effects. They really need to start calling it what it is. Don't say it's high level or low level. Say that it's harmful, cancer-causing nuclear waste. And that's the more honest statement. So,
yeah. Well, there is no low level. I mean, the reality is these so-called low level, if you look at the history of how they came up with these standards, they just picked a number out of the hat. They had no idea. John Goffman, Arthur Tamplin wanted to study 100,000 people. The government said that's too many people. They said, fine, let's study 10,000. They're like, that's too many people. They said, well, let's study 1,000. They said, that's too many people. They were allowed to study 10 people. 10 people. They didn't see any cancer in 10 people. So then the government said, well, we can guess that 1 in 1,000 might get cancer because we know it's extremely harmful. So let's be extra careful and say 1 in 10,000. So that's how the number got picked. They did no studies. They really did no studies. Absolutely none. It's a shocking fact. So when we hear...
Can you imagine if the CEO's salary was based on the same kind of, misinformation? That just would never be acceptable in any other type of industry. And yet this is what they have to do, is keep lying to us to keep their war and energy machines going, because that's what they're really interested in. Is they don't really care about polluting people. They care about how to get what they want at the cheapest price. So as long as they're able to hold the wool over people's eyes and keep them kind of hidden from the ill effects of nuclear pollution, then they've won. They're winning more every day that goes by. Is more days that billionaires like Bill Gates are making money off of the taxpayers of St. Louis and allowing a loophole in the law to require our Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services the Missouri Department of Natural Resources to be the cops for them, which is similar to a kindergarten holding the leash of King Kong. I'm
going to steal that. I'm stealing that. That's great.
Please do. It's an analogy I've used a couple of times, and I know that people understand exactly what I'm talking about. It's really insulting to think that the very small government body of the Missouri Department of Natural Resources is going to be able to do anything against this huge, billion-dollar publicly traded, stock market boost for Bill Gates. So I think if people understood the way that the business works, they are not looking into our best interest. They're not looking into our health. They're looking into how much profit they can make per stock. And just the idea that they still have this lobby group that is sabotaging efforts to get rid of nuclear waste in a populated area is nothing less than criminal to me. I can't believe they're getting away with it. But there is a legal pathway for these billion-dollar companies to try to trick the American public into thinking that things aren't as harmful as they really are. So we really need to get wise to it and understand that the people that own the pollution, the owners of this site, are the people that are not going to be honest with us any more than any other criminal who you had, come in your house and then you have some crystal come up missing. Well, you had that criminal in your house, so it had to be that person. So, we need to watch everything that these people are saying because they are breaking the law every day. They're breaking our clean air and clean water laws every day and getting away with it. So we need to have accountability, and that's a hard outside of President Obama, I'm not sure how we can push this forward at a federal level to make changes that are necessary.
Well, my opinion is I think we really need to be pressuring Joe Biden since he's the new cancer czar. That's what I think. Like, we really need to push the conversation that, we have his own son. I actually contacted him when Beau Biden died. I called his office and said, I was stunned that he said nothing about Fukushima, nothing about the depleted uranium weapons, nothing about the use of cell phones against your head, which, by the way, I hope everybody who listens to this knows you need to get a pair of headsets and don't use the Bluetooth thing, because really, especially, stop putting the cell phone next to your head. It is a known factor. It will cause you to get cancer. And so, but people need to, these are things that are like offhandedly regarded as, oh, you're just being a lunatic, or you're just being, I've had a couple of scientists who I have attempted to interview who are very nervous about talking to me on the air, because I take a very radical, the radical stance that I take is that we need to start having an honest conversation about this, and an honest conversation about why our governments are refusing to talk about it. And it has to do entirely with the war machine. You hit it exactly right. Profit on the war machines. And I think our government needs to take a different paradigm. We need to change the conversation from, instead of acting like embarrassed and pretending that they're so afraid that it's going to break the economy, and the economy's already broken. I mean, it's already in the downfall. But I really believe that, we do have these institutions of education where we could actually truly take scientific study to a greater depth and really begin to learn about how to remediate the nuclear pollution. Right now, their only solution is burying it underground. And the way they want to do it is in a way that is not even safe. Are you aware of what happened at the WIPP plant last year?
Yes, I am, with the kitty litter that was,
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am aware of that. And so, again, it was something that somebody who probably had no business making a decision like that just went and changed the brand without thinking of the serious consequences involved. And as it turns out, there was a chemical reaction that went south. Well, that's because we can't have people like that making those decisions. We can't have the governor of Flint deciding that he's going to not put the lead pollution filters or whatever into the water to excrete some of or to chelate the heavy metals. He's not the person to make that decision. I don't care if he's the person that does the collective bargaining for the state, or thought that he could save money that way. I think once a decision about public safety is made, it shouldn't be up to elected to decide whether or not they're going to stick with those things.
That's right. Well, the difference between Flint, Michigan and St. Louis or Hanford or any other nuclear dump site is that somebody in Flint, Michigan can go to jail for knowingly causing harm to people. Like, we know it's coming out that the governor knew sometime last year that this was harmful, and at the same time he was sending out emails and notices to the citizens not to worry about it, that it wasn't that dangerous. He could actually be held criminally liable for that. Whereas in the nuclear industry, what's going on, Bill Gates, multi-billionaire, knows for a fact his investment that he has a hand in is causing people cancer. And nobody, not a single individual from Republic Services all the way down from that woman who, the $1,500 a month salaried individual who tweeted some unkind remarks to the St. Louis moms, all the way up to Bill Gates, not one person can be held criminally liable for the harm they're causing. Not one.
Which blows my mind.
Yes.
If it's not hard enough to have, I heard something that one of the St. Louis moms said, and is that I love my country, but I fear my government. And that is just exactly how I feel about it. Also, I think St. Louis largely, like we talked about on the last show, there's a lot of hometown pride. People love St. Louis. They're not going to flee St. Louis because this is where they've spent their whole lives. This is where their family.
I think we need to take that back and stop, because guess what? We are the government. And this is the thing. People need to own this. We are the government. The reason, this is one of the things that I have had to face myself. It is my responsibility for ignoring this myself, and allowing our elected officials to play this, game. This is where I can't help but start cussing. I had to stop myself just now.
Don't do it
because
on my account.
because
That's what I do.
honestly, it is up to us. I don't, people say, well, aren't you afraid? Well, it's like the day that I called Roy Blunt's office and Claire McCaskill's, the day after that, Skype got removed from my computer. I had to reinstall it. Am I afraid? No, I'm not afraid of them, because guess what? They're human beings. They put their pants on one day at a time, one leg at a time, just like me. And in order for us to stop the fascism, this is how Hitler was able to murder millions and millions of people in exactly the same fashion, with the approval of an entire population inside his parliament. This is exactly what's going on in our own elected officials and with our own elected bodies. Nobody wants to say that the emperor has no clothes. Nobody wants to say it, but guess what? The emperor has no clothes, and it is time to stop. It's up to us to not be afraid of them and to call them and call the Department of Energy directly. Call up Moniz's office, write him letters, send him pictures of your children that have cancer. Bombard them with facts. I mean, crack open that hardened heart that those people have. Because I believe that the people in Congress, I found out last night that the mayor of Eugene has cancer now. And I found out, that breaks my heart. We're exposed to Fukushima radiation, yet nobody here wants to talk about the increasing levels of radiation coming out of the nuclear volcano in Japan. That has been ongoing now for 5 years. My senator had prostate cancer a couple years ago. And, all of this, nobody's talking about the nuclear volcano. And now we have this, one of the things that I went to after I spoke with you last week, Wendy, there's a page that's called homefacts.com. And you can go there and find out about all the FUSRAP areas, all the FUSRAP locations near your own home. It's called homefacts.com. You type in your address and you'll be able to find all kinds of things about where the pollution is in your area. And we have now, our government has, our elected officials have been happily taking in money while they have neglected their duties to protect our country. And it is time for that to stop. We must force our legislators to change the legislation so that the people of St. Louis can get, I don't know, you probably share my feeling. It's unconscionable that we have elected officials who are willing to actually stop St. Louis from taking the pollution out of St. Louis to put it in a less populated area. That's unconscionable in my mind. They're not even talking about burying it in concrete. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be one thing if they were to say, okay, let's put 10 feet of concrete over it and that would be good enough. But we're talking about it getting into the water supply of St. Louis residents.
That's exactly right. The original record of decision from 2008 from the EPA, which, by the way, it took them 18 years of studying the site to determine that what they were going to do was put some rock and rubble on top of it and leave it where it is. It took 18 years for that study to happen, which right then I'm kind of blown away that the government would be so, cavalier about just letting it go. There are letters after letters after letters from different nuclear regulatory entities that say this has the potential to be harmful to human health and the environment. It needs to go. And then, the next thing you know, there's more paperwork and more red tape involved. So it just seems like decade after decade, it doesn't seem like it is, that the electeds have just been able to just keep on pushing it on down the line because there really doesn't seem to be any consequences for them not to do that. So nobody's going to pay for something out of their own budget of an issue that was something that was dumped on them from decades ago. They're just, denial is easier for them.
Well,
and that is
we're going to deny
advocate.
we're going to deny ourselves into extinction if we don't get off of our stick here. Like, this is the thing, if people don't get on this one, and I mean, I honestly do not believe that if we continue to allow this to go on, I know this is a radical statement, but I think it's true. All indications are if we continue to let this happen and not really address it, we are not going to have human beings that can reproduce in 75 years. That's what it's going to look like. I mean, our species fitness is seriously being questioned by the negligence of the American. I mean, honestly, you're like me, Wendy. We were all told that we have the greatest nation on the planet, that we have the most caring people, the most just government, and frankly, there is no justice. It's just us. It's just them. We're not included in the us here. In this article that I pulled up, one of the things that they talk about is the Department of Energy really needs to assess its safety assessment of all the nuclear sites, not just this website, but the government really needs to formulate a plan and create. I really believe that we need like an army of people. And when I mean an army, I mean we need thousands of students and scientific-minded people who will look at this and make an effort to come up with a way to remediate, how to reverse all the nuclear pollution, because we can move the waste and we can start doing studies on how to solve cancer, help people get cured from cancer. But how do we stop people from getting cancer? I mean, if you overlay a map of the nuclear I did this when I first got engaged in this. I took a map of all the cancer clusters in the country and I overlaid it with all the nuclear power plants, and there's a direct correlation. It doesn't take a scientific mind to see that nuclear equals cancer, period. That's all it is.
Exactly. I think so many people are still unaware, and it's still we're still up to educating people to the point where we want them to get, to get feeling about it, to get mad, get angry, get upset. But what you want to do is get busy talking to every level of your elected. Start with the people that, are the president of your neighborhood association, and then go up from there. All of the state electeds, all of the federally electeds, everyone that, that could remotely have any accountability towards this. We need to engage in specific mindful conversation with every one of these people to let them know that the people of St. Louis are not just going to go away. We're not just going to be told, everything's okay and let it happen. We have the ability to observe and see that people that we know are getting sick and that the time is now. So,
well, look, Wendy, you know what? This actually brings up this point that this speaks to why people don't do it. I know for myself, my own Senator Ron Wyden won't answer the phone to me anymore. Mm-hmm. I have contacted my local officials and I have contacted my water board. None of them talk to me anymore. The door is pretty much slammed shut on this issue. I was allowed to talk to them 2 times. And after that, they're like, yes, well, we don't have time. We're busy. We understand your point of view. Thank you very much. Unless you have something new, please don't come back. We don't have time to talk to you. So this is what happens. We have been legislated out of the conversation. And I understand why people stay silent. And this is why I think we need to, I don't know what the answer is. I'm just like you. I'm just an average citizen, just dumbfounded at the lack of accountability. But I do encourage people to persevere. Keep calling them. Even if they won't see you, keep calling them. Even if they won't talk to you, keep calling them. Even if they're not going to pay attention to it. Because we need to irritate the wound. Because really, our elected officials are as wounded as we are. They don't even know it. They just have their blinders on. They don't know that they're being hit. So those of us who really are shocked by this whole negligence. It's really just really I mean, we live in a country. I mean, it's almost as if we get shocked because people abuse their children. Well, this is child abuse. Children are dying over this. This is child abuse. I mean, it's
a human rights violation, and that's how it should be treated. Because if we don't have entitlements of clean air and clean water, then I'm not going to be as concerned about what my taxes are paying for in terms of the school district if there's not going to be as many children attending the school because they have leukemia. No, we need to work on the root causes first. I completely agree with what you said about preventing cancer as opposed to just treating it. And that is something that, people may resist because then there's going to be people that aren't going to make as much money off of it. So we really need to change the ideas of how we think about the treatment of this issue and the understanding of the risk factors of nuclear pollution. A lot of people don't understand there are some things that you can do to prevent extra exposure to ionizing radiation. But then again, if you go out to an area where there's thorium in the wind, then every breath that you take, you have a potential exposure route. So knowledge really is power, and that's, again, why I appreciate you so much having this forum to discuss this, because the more people are educated about it and understand what's going on, the more hopefully they'll feel empowered to do something about it.
Well, I hope so. I actually just got a Facebook message from Brian DeLear, and he actually messaged me and said he had some an urgent business issue, a fire that had to be put out. So, at least we know that he's okay. So that's a good thing. And I'm going to call him after the show, and I will reschedule with him to be on. Perhaps what I should do if he has a business that has this type. I mean, I get the same way with my business. If there's a fire to be put out, when you kind of have to deal with it. So maybe I should pre-record his interview. But Wendy, I really appreciate you coming on here. We've got about probably 3.5 minutes left. But I really appreciate the last minute jumping in. Really, this is exactly, you have been after this. How long have you been engaged in this matter? About 2.5 years?
That I knew of. I mean, I would suggest that I kind of knew about it before that, but I didn't know it was due to nuclear pollution. My father had spent a total of 15 years suffering from different types of cancer, and at the time, I didn't believe, how is it that he could have so many different things happening all at once? Well, now I know. So in the age of knowing comes the responsibility of doing. So since I was aware of the fact of Sue's Rap cleaning up parts of St. Louis and that St. Louis has such a radioactive legacy, now I feel more prepared to fight the fight that needs fighting. Before, I just thought people were sick and dying and there was no answer. Now I realize that this is an intentional move. So
this is an intentional move, and it's an actual disregard for human life. The ironic part is that it's so stunning that the legislators that actually live in St. Louis, that live in your area, who are fighting you, because their families, no doubt, have been affected.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation. People, have been told by Republic, by the people that are financially responsible for cleaning up, that it's dangerous to dig it up, and it'll expose more people. These things simply are not true. But because of fear, people have a tendency to believe them because they don't want to take any unnecessary risks. Well, I think it's a much bigger problem to leave the problem here than it would be to take care of it the way that millions of other square yards of polluted material have been trucked away from the residential areas here. That's what we need. That's what we need people to understand needs to be done.
Well, look, I'm going to give out the phone number for Charles Bonner one more time, because I cannot reiterate this enough. We have less than about 35 seconds left. Charles Bonner of Bonner & Bonner, Attorneys at Law, 415-601-0268. And, start a class action lawsuit. Contact him. Start your own. Don't be afraid to get engaged in this. We have 15 seconds left. Thank you, Wendy, for joining us. And at such a last minute, you are always such a valuable guest. I really appreciate it. I look forward to you being on again. Appreciate your time. Put your courage feet on and take action, you guys. We need it.